Okay, you're live.
Sage, you're on mute.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to March's Housing and Community Development meeting. I'm Sage Turner, and I'm your chair. All council members and staff are participating virtually today. For those of you who are out there with us, welcome. To help our audience follow along, I will state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing in at 855-925-2801 and entering the code 9791. For today's meeting, we will have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. We will take public comment on agenda item 4, the Mountain Housing Opportunities Loan Deferral, as well as general public comment at the end of this meeting. To call in and comment, use the same number above, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9791. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, callers will hear, for more options, please press star. Pressing star 3 will allow callers to continue to listen live and join a speaker queue. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and callers should only join the speaker queue during the time in the agenda they wish to speak. Okay, I will now go through roll call and introduce committee members and the staff who are participating virtually today. Please remember to keep your microphone muted and only unmute when you would like to speak. Council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Vice Mayor Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Hi, good morning.
Assistant City Manager Kathy Ball.
I think she had a call.
Okay. Community and Economic Development Director Sam Powers.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Sam. Economic Development Program Director Nikki Reed.
Hi, good morning.
And Community Development Program Director Paul D'Angelo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, so we're going to get started on our agenda with item number 1, approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance? Are there any comments, questions, or changes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Thank you both. All right, any discussion? Okay. We will now roll call vote to approve the motion and the second. When I say your name, please say aye to approve the minutes. Vice Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley.
Aye.
And Sage Turner, myself. Aye. Great, thank you. The minutes have been approved. We are now moving on to agenda item 2, the Community Development and Cdbg CV Homeless Updates. I believe we're going to hear from Paul first.
Sure. So good morning, everybody. Paul D'Angelo here with Community and Economic Development. We've got the community development updates for you this morning. We have now promised not being overachievers, but we have separated this out into 3 updates, hopefully for better communication and messaging, not only to you all, but to the community. We have our regular community updates about things that are going on within the department. We also have an update regarding the Cdbg CV dollars. Those are the COVID dollars that have come our way to assist the community members, particularly with rental assistance. We're also using those updates kind of as a resource guide for other funding coming our way to assist with things like rental or utility assistance. And then lastly, new this month is community development updates on homeless. A lot of community conversation around the homelessness issue, and we wanted to try to tell that story a little bit better with its own separate updates. So happy to answer any questions on any of those or the members of the team, and then I may point out a few things at the end if that's okay.
Any questions for Paul?
I just had a few, just one question. Well, I probably have a few, but one is coming to mind about the Lee Walker Heights project. I know we're into phase 1. We're actually placing folks. And I continue to ask the same question because I just need clarity. Of the 96 past residents, how many are returning?
So Councilwoman Smith, we do have the updates there on Lee Walker Heights, and we are in pretty good communication with the Housing Authority. Working with them, they've got a general number of who they think is going to return that we actually put a number out there last month. But in speaking with the folks at the Housing Authority, they just wanted to pause on actually putting a number out, because while several buildings aren't open yet and may not be open until the May or June date, and people might be saying at this point that they want to come back, that number apparently has been fluctuating. So we can always bring in Tara Irby or someone from the Housing Authority to discuss more. But in working with them in partnership, they just wanted to make sure that we had the line. As a reminder, all eligible Lee Walker Heights residents have a right to return to the redeveloped site. And in my experience with my previous work at a Housing Authority, I think they're doing a great job on the communication and trying to keep that up with the previous residents. But as an actual figure, I think that I would want the Housing Authority to come in maybe to talk more about that.
Okay, that's good, because I think the concern is, even though they're eligible to return, a lot of folks after relocating may not want to return. And is there a possibility for their spots to be opened up to other Housing Authority residents who might not be of Lee Walker Heights, but might be in the other housing projects who may want to relocate into this new project?
So to transfer to the new units at Lee Walker Heights,
yeah,
I can follow up on that.
And that would help us fulfill that 96.
And Paul, I also believe, but don't want to state it in fact, so I would love for you to ask. Can you hear me? Sorry, I see your ear. Other Housing Authority property residents would also include folks who are on a waiting list to get in. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be people moving from one location to another. It could also be people with vouchers who were trying to get in.
And I believe—
verify that, please.
I will. And I do, it was originally 96 units. It now will be 212. And I do believe they will be looking at people on the wait list to move them into these new units. But I'll get further clarity. That's usually how that would work with the URA, which is the Unified Relocation Act. And so I will follow up to get the clarity, particularly around other residents of public housing with Lee Walker in the system that could possibly move to Lee Walker Heights.
Now, what was your reference to the United Relocation Act? What did you say, Paul? I wasn't clear. I didn't hear you.
Sure. It's called the URA, and it's the Unified Relocation Act. I think I'm getting the U correct there. But when you do something like this type of rebuild, you have to follow certain guidelines. I think it comes out of the Department of Transportation when it comes to relocating people and everything we have to do around that. And it's a pretty important process that I know that the Housing Authority is following. Okay. And so I can always put a link if anyone wants to learn more, but it's a really stringent process, and they've been doing a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And are you looking for questions or comments across all the updates? Because we have the several documents. Okay.
Sure, whatever works with you all, and that's great.
Any other questions for Paul? These are really extensive updates, Paul, and I really appreciate it. I did notice on some of the, let's see which one it was. It's titled Community Development Block Grant Funding for COVID Relief. At the end, we've got some eviction stats. I think I did see Parker jump on. I don't know if she has any information for February yet. I'm just kind of curious, but I noticed it was still blank, and it's just early in March, so that's probably why. But we don't have that figure.
I can chat with some of my coworkers right now and see if I can get you that figure. I'm not sure if they have it yet, but I can find out real fast.
No worries, Parker. Thank you.
Right. Sure.
I had a general question, Paul. Since we're still in the pandemic, I was wondering if there were any new guidelines for our annual home and Cdbg funding decisions. Did they kind of alter that, give any leeway around this
So last year we received a lot of waivers with the COVID pandemic for not only the 2021 funding, but also the 1920 funding. We have not, and Megan's on the call too, just to double correct me there, but we have not received any waivers for the 21-22 funding that I know of or am aware of as of yet. And we've been in really consistent contact with our HUD representative out of Greensboro, but nothing I know of. Megan, do you want to make sure that I'm saying that correctly, if you don't mind?
That is correct. At this point, HUD has issued no waivers for the next funding round, or given no indication that they would be forthcoming.
A question about the Housing Trust Fund balance. I see that it's been updated, and at the very end, I know this number can be hard to tackle, but at the very bottom it says the garage conversions is not included in this list. But where are we in that process of, I'm recalling this from AHAC last year when we had applicants apply for and receive or be awarded the funding, but then the project stalls. Are we trying to create language that after some length of time that they lose their entitlement to that funding?
Yeah, so a couple answers there. The Housing Trust Fund policy in our update will address that, the use of that funding and the importance of trying to do our best to award projects that are shovel ready or close to shovel ready so they move. As a reminder, with the garage conversions, that was passed by HCD in June of 2018. Then there was a lot of post conversation about what was actually doable at that time when it came to garage conversions, where they were located, was it the correct zoning, etc. Kirk is coming back next month for the restaurant court project, and we have a meeting with him this week asking him to address where he's at with the garage conversions. Just as a reminder, it passed HCD, but it never went to council. So that's why we're going to try to get direction from Kirk on exactly, holding those funds or what he would like to see happen there. So more to report next month.
Perfect. Thank you.
Paul, I have a question that is strictly for informative purposes. I'm before I ask the question, not intended to blow anything up, just wondering what happens if all the Cdbg funds are not allocated?
So are you talking in an award season that if we don't allocate all the funding? So what would normally happen is, if you remember from, or some of you might remember from last year, when we had the waiver for the 2021 Cdbg funding, we were allowed to go up above our public services cap with last year's 2021 funding. When that all happened, we kind of paused to say, okay, well, we're going to have some more money here with additional program income, I think, as well. And so we put it in what was called contingency, as let's figure this out and think about it. And so last year it went into contingency, and then we ended up distributing it to other public service grantees. So usually we don't have any leftover funds. If we do, we can put it in a contingency fund just to kind of pause it to figure out at a later time, but you don't want to do that at a much later time based on our timeliness test and wanting to submit a full and accurate action plan to HUD.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Paul on his extensive updates?
And Sage, if I could just add as a reminder, we have a pretty in-depth community development listserv. I probably say this every month, that we share these updates when we're done this meeting. They're also posted online on our city's website, community development. And then we work with the CAPE team to share out these updates to the community. And then the one thing I just wanted to point out on these updates is at the bottom of all of them, we really talk about resources, because not only is it informative, but we want to be a resource to the community. And we talked a little bit more this month, and we will, about the 211 service, just in the fact that 211 is available to our community members who are struggling with housing affordability, home ownership issues, paying rent, utilities, and even things like down payment assistance or concerns from the community about homeless people or homeless camps. So we've been really having great conversations with 211, and they are a great partner and a resource to us, and reminded us that they can handle a lot of these calls. Our team gets hundreds of calls each month regarding several issues related to housing. So we're just trying to put them out as a resource. We're always happy to take the calls, but 211 is a great resource in the community, and we're just reminding the community that that's there to handle a lot of those questions as well.
That's great. Thank you, Paul. And for those who have been able to read the update or access it online, there's also some information around relief for back owed utilities. I know this has come up a few times, and how to find assistance. And you can go to our website and find links and apply through the county for utilities, for rent. It's not just rent. It can be used for utilities. It says the internet service does not qualify, but there is no cap on assistance. And I like to see this update here where you then mention that there's a new $1.9 trillion in COVID relief, and I appreciate that you'll be keeping us updated. We don't have any current information on that and how it will roll out yet, but brings more hope. Any other questions or comments for Paul? I have one last one around 319. Have we engaged in a contract with a proposer?
Yeah, so we have the Homes Urban as the selected developer, and we've got the letter of intent. Nikki and I just had the very first meeting, I think last week, with the team to try to work on a schedule of moving forward. And so it was a first kind of introductory meeting with their whole team. And Nick and I think you'll be hearing more about a timeline, and then we'll be bringing in, I think each side bringing in more people to the table as the conversations continue. But it was a great first meeting, and we're really excited to see what we can do here with Homes Urban.
That is very exciting. Thank you.
So I do have a question about 319. As some may recall, I had proposed holding off on 319 so that that property could be considered for being removed into those properties owned by the city, which were acquired through urban renewal, since there were two city-owned properties, White Labs and Ashland Avenue, which had been removed from that bucket. So when can we expect to have an update at this committee about that proposal?
So can I, Antoinette, can I step in just a minute to ask? It would be really helpful if the committee would make a recommendation for this, because typically staff doesn't just from one council member do something. So if the committee wants to request that this be addressed, we're happy to do that. Is that, does that seem like the committee supports that? And I'm sorry, this is just procedural and sounds very bureaucratic, but we do need the majority of the committee to recommend that we take this and move this forward to add it to the agenda.
And how should that be done? Just through a motion or a suggestion from the committee?
It could be through a head nod. It doesn't have to be that formal, but if all three of you just verbally tell us that you want us to bring that back to you, then we'll be happy to do that, along with the process that got us here. So
I'm definitely in support of that. And with that being said, out of the 9 proposals that we received, who was the runner-up?
The runner-up is Laurel Street, or was Laurel Street.
And that developer is out of which city?
Laurel Street is out of Charlotte.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing is that Antoinette has requested we discuss something. Vice Mayor Smith has supported. I will also support it. So Ms. Ball, if you could prepare for future agenda items that we can have an adequate discussion and public input and so on, that would be very much appreciated.
we will do that for the next agenda.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Mosley, for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments or things we'd like to request for a future agenda item around these updates? Okay. Thank you, Paul, for your update.
I think you muted yourself again, Sage.
I'm sorry, spacebar is not my friend today. Okay, so that concludes item number 2. Thank you, Paul, for the updates. And we are on to item number 3 for those of you who are following along on the phone or at home. This will be confirming a special HCD meeting for Cdbg 2022 applications. So we are looking at a scheduled meeting for March 26th from 9 a.m. to 12. It would be entirely virtual. We would have a public availability to watch and participate. And I guess we just need to confirm that we can hold that meeting. And do we need a vote on this? I don't really think we need a vote. So a simple nod to acknowledge that we will have a special meeting on the 26th of this month. Okay. All right, great. Thank you. And we are moving on to number 4 on the agenda, which is Mountain Housing Opportunities Loan Deferral. And Paul, are you starting us off with a discussion on this? There's some documents in your packet, folks.
Shockingly, no. We have a new community development team member who maybe you haven't had a chance to meet yet, Mary Brooke Cox, who is going to present this with Mountain Housing, as she's been one of kind of moved into a lead contact with that agency as we try to find great ways to divide up our work efficiently and effectively. So Mary Brooke is going to lead this effort regarding the staff report.
Welcome, Mary Brooke.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, Mary Brooke Cox. I'm a community development analyst here with the city. Our partners at Mountain Housing Opportunities, or MHO, have requested to alter loan terms on 5 existing loans. These are valued at just over $680,000. And there are 3 components to this request that I'd like to break down with y'all. So the first portion is to extend the maturity dates for 20 years, eliminate interest payments, and then to raise the rent restrictions to 60% area median income, or AMI, from 50%. And this would be done in exchange for an additional 20-year affordability period. So the city extended these loans under the CARET loan program, which provided low interest rates for developers of affordable housing. Under this program, MHO acquired and renovated 6 properties and created 22 affordable units. So the loans for the properties, here's the addresses: 61, 63, 65, and 67 Annandale, 280 Merriman, and 6 Trinity Chapel. Those are the properties we're discussing. MHO has found that operating cash from older renovated properties is not sufficient to pay the debt service while also building those replacement reserves for future capital needs. So the properties essentially are operating at a break-even level, which has been exacerbated by the pandemic. So truly the benefit of this proposal is we're preserving affordable units for an additional 20 years and protecting future program income that may result from the sale of a property. The drawback here is that the city would no longer earn approximately $25,000 on the annual interest payment on these loans. I'd like to emphasize that this is not going to impact the general fund. The loans were made using federal funding sources. So when funds are returned to the city, they would be reprogrammed for similar purposes. So staff is recommending that this committee approve MHO's request to extend the maturity dates of a total of 5 CARET or Cdbg loans, which are valued at $683,028, eliminate yearly interest payments in exchange for an additional 20-year affordability period, and rent restrictions raised to 60% AMI. If you have any questions, I'm available, but we also have James Dennis with MHO who's available as well.
Welcome, James.
Thank you.
Councilwoman, any questions?
I do. You said that the pandemic kind of exacerbated payments from tenants, and I was wondering if any of your tenants received any rental assistance.
So I want to make sure you can hear me.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. So for these particular units, we have not had to support their income to date, we have had delayed payments, but with our management company, we have set up some repayment agreements so that residents understand that they're still responsible for payments, but we're helping them to do that over time. If we have raised some funds through the community to be able to support them if for some reason they're not able to make payments at all. So we will make that available if it comes to that.
James, are these units, it sounds like they've been rented by y'all, managed by y'all for some time. Are they voucher accepting units by default or?
Yes, all of our units, we accept vouchers. And I want to point out that all of these properties were built probably around the 1930s. So they were already older properties. And then in the early 2000s, we acquired them and renovated them. So now they're about 20 years old. They've gone through a lot of tenants and a lot of wear and tear. But because we are restricted in income, well, a couple of things. We have found that older properties are more difficult to maintain, even though we've gone through a rehab. So we have a higher operating expense related to maintenance. And that has prevented us from putting into reserves the amount that we would desire to put into reserves that would then be used for future capital improvements.
One change I didn't catch when I was reading the documents was, and I want to make sure I heard this right, there's actually a request to move from a 50% AMI limit to a 60% AMI limit?
Correct. The properties currently have a 50% limit. What we're asking is that we be able to take that to 60%, and we will not, the current tenants will not be affected by that. We would only go up to 60% with new people coming in. And what that does is it will, over time, it will help us to increase our revenues to then help offset that higher operating expense and hopefully give us the cash flow to put into reserves.
Thank you. And these homes did you say these homes are about 20 years old, these units?
The renovations are about 20 years old. Most of the properties were built in the 1930s or 1920s, 1930s. So the buildings are they're 100 years old now. And so they have a lot of maintenance issues.
That explains it. That's something I worry about when we talk about down payment assistance as well, getting into these older homes that need major repairs. Thank you. So to understand, so I want to make sure I got this. So we're the request is to move to 0% interest. These units would be kept in an affordability range for another 20 years. Were they about to term out on that affordability requirement?
Yes, ma'am. So three of the loans are coming due May 1st of this year. And so we needed to either extend them or find a way to refinance them. What we found was that going a conventional route would have been very costly and created more of a cash flow issue. The other two loans are coming up due in 2023 and 2025. And we thought we would bundle all of these Carrot and Cdbg loans into one request, so we weren't coming to you multiple times for that. But what we would ask is that we would modify the loan documents to simply extend each of those maturity dates for 20 years.
Oh, each of them. So the ones that due in 2025 would go to 2045.
Correct.
That satisfies my questions. Councilwoman Mosley or Vice Mayor Smith?
I do have I have a question, I just need a little clarity. You said that the rents will raise from the 50% AMI to 60, but the 60 is only for the new tenants, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We would not start charging current tenants anything higher than what we're already charging. But through attrition, when people move out, new tenants, we would incrementally increase those rents.
So none of the units will maintain the 50% AMI.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
So none of the units will maintain the 50% AMI. Once the current tenants phase out or their lease is done, then that unit will also move to 60% AMI. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Would anyone like to entertain a motion?
I'd do it if I thought what I was getting ready to say is enough. So I'll offer the motion and you tell me if that's enough to include I move that we recommend to full council that MHO's rehabilitation loans be deferred until loan maturity. Is that sufficient for what we're trying to do?
Say it one more time, that the loans be moved to, I'm sorry.
That the rehabilitation loans be deferred until loan maturity.
Is loan maturity the same on all the, I mean, are we not extending the maturity 20 years? Is the language simple like that? Will that work?
That's why I asked my question. That's the language in the documents we received.
I think you probably need to include in exchange for the 20-year affordability period and rent restrictions raised to 60.
Would you consider
Yeah.
the motion and I second your motion, Vice Mayor?
I do have a draft here in the documents if it helps.
And Councilwoman Turner, this is Paul here. Janice Ashley, our legal, has raised her hand.
Oh, I can't see her. Let me get more tiles on my screen to make sure I can see everyone. Just a second.
Sorry, I've just learned that raising the hand thing, which is really helpful. Good morning. I was just going to say it's sometimes easy to say that. So you're going to modify these loans according to you can state what you've already stated, Councilwoman Mosley, but and according to the other terms and conditions presented. So that way, when it goes to council, we'll probably have a similar motion that lays out all these different terms, the increase in the change in the income levels, the period, the interest rate. So I think that would capture everything according to the terms presented. Yeah.
According to the terms presented. Great language. Thank you. Vice Mayor, did you want to make that motion or did you, or can we get it made?
Looks like Antoinette's working.
Okay.
With these motions, I get jammed up so much. So all I can do is read from the motion that was suggested.
Oh, Councilwoman Mosley, I believe you're muted.
So Janice, would the motion then be something like, we recommend to full council that MHO's rehabilitation loans be modified according to the terms and conditions presented? Is that sufficient?
Yes. Unless you wanted to specify what you'd already you'd specified a couple of things. So you could say what you started out with the extension of the time period. I think you wanted to get in there the change in income and other terms and conditions as presented. How's that?
And I think I heard a second. Vice Mayor, did you second?
I did.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? I think we're clear on the motion language. Thank you for your assistance, Janice. And with that, we can go to a roll call vote if there's no further discussion. Okay. Vice Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley.
Aye.
And I, Sage Turner, myself, aye. All right, great. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, James, for being here. And thank you, Janice, for the extra assistance. Okay, we are now moving on to Oh my goodness, we did not have public comment.
There was no one in the queue, so.
Okay, that is my mistake. I apologize, everyone. I'm thankful that no one was in the queue. We should have had public comment though. Okay, so then we are moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is 1.6 million in Cdbg program income for the purchase of 65 Ford Street. So this will just be a discussion today. We won't have any activity or actions, but let's discuss. So, Paul, did you want to kick this off? It looks like we've got you down.
Sure, I can go through the staff report for just as a discussion. We did go ahead and share the staff report and resolution, as this will be on council next Tuesday, but I'm happy to walk through the staff report if you'd like me to.
I was able to read it. Perhaps we could see if there are questions from the committee.
No questions, but I think it'd be good just to do a brief run through for the viewers, for the public.
Absolutely. So, and the material should be available for everyone to follow along if they'd like. But what we're looking for is this $1.6 million in community development block grant program income that has come to us through the sale of the White Labs, which occurred in December of 2020. Where city received a total of $3.7 million in revenue, where again, 1.6 specifically is set aside for Cdbg program income, as part of that parcel was purchased in the 1970s through the urban renewal of the East End Valley Street area. With that being put down as program income, it must be spent on Cdbg program eligible activities to benefit low to moderate income individuals and families, or in low to moderate income areas. The funds must be spent on eligible Cdbg projects before May 1st, 2020 to pass the city's annual HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, timeliness test where the city risks future grant allocations per HUD requirements. Acquisition of real property is an eligible use for Cdbg program income and includes the purchase of land. Cdbg funds may be used to pay for the cost of surveys to identify the property to be acquired, appraisals, the preparation of legal documents, recording fees, other costs like closing costs necessary for that acquisition process. Staff has identified an eligible land acquisition to assist the Housing Authority's Rental Assistance Demonstration Program for land to rebuild the Deferral apartments, similar to the rebuild of Lee Walker Heights, and identifying this as a strategic use of these time-sensitive federal funds. This investment will specifically purchase 65 Ford Street, approximately 21 acres, transferring federal funds tied to urban renewal into a viable housing resource to serve more than 160 low and moderate income individuals and families. The land acquisition at 65 Ford Street will kickstart a year-long community engagement and planning process to see affordable housing community amenities built in the Deferral area. So that's a little bit of background on this funding. And again, happy to answer any questions. This is a difficult timeliness issue and a HUD issue, but we feel like this purchase makes the most sense not only for the timeliness test, but an eligible activity and the benefit to low to moderate income individuals and families, and in partnership with the Housing Authority.
Thank you, Paul. I think especially worth noting is the timeliness and the time constraints, because if I understood correctly, every year our HUD dollars, I think someone mentioned this earlier, what happens when we don't use them? Well, it almost sends the message that we don't need them and could potentially impact our future funding. So this is a great move. The timing is, with all that's going on, I appreciate that staff has caught this and tended to the timing. And I don't have any additional questions. I think it's a great move out there. I know we did a little reconnaissance in AHAC and learned a little bit about this land, and it's adjacent to Deferral. It's 60 acres in total, and this is the 40-acre parcel, right? Because Deferral sits on 20 acres. So it'll be a collective 60 acres to look at redevelopment and building stronger community assets out there, which I think is wonderful.
And just to be clear, 65 Ford Street's 21 acres in contiguous to land that we already own, known as Cedar Hill.
Great, thank you. Questions from committee?
Just have comments, and then maybe a question will come on the end. But yeah, so the sale of white labs has become a very sensitive conversation in our community, along with the exemption of Ashland Avenue property from the urban renewal, I guess what we're calling moratorium. It's not really a moratorium, but and with that being said, I don't believe that this is the greatest story around the use of that program income, because it's still very ambiguous if this redevelopment project is going to really directly impact or counter the effects that urban renewal has had on our community. I'm looking for the better story. I'm looking for the better use of the 1.6. And I'm almost thinking that it should be framed around what was lost. What was lost? Sense of ownership, sense of belonging, sense of place. And I'm not sure that will be restored in the renovation of Deferview. I don't feel like that will be restored there totally. So I'm wondering, with the activities that are eligible through Cdbg, if a better use of this 1.6 million should be directed to our housing authority home ownership program through a possible DPA program. Is that eligible?
So for an eligible use to use Cdbg funding for down payment assistance, I believe that is an eligible activity. The problem would be in the timeliness test of it, to be able to spend all 1.6 million by that May 1st timeliness test. And, you know, Councilwoman Smith, even when a community like ours is lucky enough to receive funding like this, that timeliness test doesn't change. There's no kind of exception like, oh, we'll give you more time. There is that timeliness test because we're always supposed to be doing our best to be prepared with another, with an activity that's always ready to move. And so with the timeliness test, I don't think that would work. But I would, to your other point, I think probably something that could be notated is the use of this funding over in the Deferview site when it comes to the purpose-built community. And in that partnership with purpose-built community, what we're trying to accomplish in partnership and with the community in the rebuild of Deferview, as well as the larger 60 acres. And purpose-built community serves as a bridge connecting community leaders with resources and partner organizations that share a vision to make a holistic at-scale investments, including housing, education, and recreation, and define neighborhoods to achieve excellent and equitable outcomes for the people who live there. And so perhaps it would make, going back to the screen here, Councilwoman Smith, to talk perhaps in the staff report a little bit about that partnership with the Housing Authority as well as purpose-built communities, which takes a holistic view of rebuilding a community to have a neighborhood opportunity.
I get that, Paul, and it is beautiful. But that's not getting to the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is understanding the direct impact that urban renewal had on the community and the loss of homes, loss of business, and how can we direct the money to offset. Okay, so if it were to go to the home ownership program through Housing Authority, then it would be spent. It would be allocated. It would no longer be on our books. And I do believe that they do have the formation of a program with policy already. So I don't get your point about the timeliness of it, because if this committee decides to redirect that 1.6 million to Housing Authority, then it will show up as monies directed and spent.
Unfortunately, with the CDBG program, it's a reimbursement program. So the money actually has to be spent. It can't just be allocated. It actually has to be spent by May 1st. So if we did allocate the 1.6 million to the Housing Authority, they would actually have to spend all of that money down by May 1st in the form of down payment assistance.
So they'll track the money in that way to make sure it was spent by.
Yes.
Okay. Because I was thinking that we could direct that 1.6 to Housing Authority for a program to support their home ownership, and we can actually use the $3 million that we set aside for land banking from the housing bond to secure the parcel or the land next to, what is it? Ford Street. Ford Street. I mean, so we have money to spend. So I'm not supporting this today. I'll just say that I want a greater story.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. A couple of things. So if I recall, we used $1.5 million of the $3 million down payment or land banking monies for the adjacent property. Did we not? Oh.
As of right now, the land banking dollars sit at $3 million. 1.5 of it was going to purchase 65 Ford Street, but with the receipt of this funding, we have made that change because we have a pretty strict timeliness test coming up in 6 weeks that we have to spend this money by. So we made the recommendation to use this funding to purchase 65 Ford Street, leaving $3 million in the land banking fund.
Thank you, Paul, which is interesting. I'm sorry, Antoinette. I'm sorry. Interestingly, I saw that the Talbert on your updates, Paul, was also set to receive money from White Labs for the purchase there. So in theory, to Vice Mayor Smith's point, the CBDG money could go into something else. The land banking could buy Ford, and the White Labs money could buy Talbert. I mean, there's a little, maybe that's something that y'all could flush out. Councilwoman Mosley, go ahead with your question.
So actually I had two questions. One is a broader one that people go, why are you asking this question? So let's start there. Say if we didn't have the May deadline, could these funds theoretically be used to buy land in areas that had been gentrified via urban renewal, to buy that land back and set them aside in this urban renewal pot of land that we have? That's the first question. The second question is, as it relates to the Ford Street, could this money be used to purchase that? And then once a developer is chosen, the money received from the developer go into the Housing Authority for down payment assistance?
So to answer your first question, land acquisition is a CDBG eligible activity. So we could use that to purchase any land that was available. Just to note, the reason we went with 65 Ford Street, that it was far enough along in the process that we could actually close by the May 1st deadline, or really, a few days before that. And considering things like a HUD environmental assessment, which can take 60 days. So we had to immediately jump on that to make sure that we were able to beat that time in this test of getting that done before the May 1st date. So land acquisition can be done, absolutely. Just trying to clarify why 65 Ford Street made a lot of sense timeliness wise. Regarding Ford Street, I don't think, as we purchase that property, we know it'll be a part of some larger redevelopment of that 60 acres, and selling that land or donating that land into the process of what that will eventually look like hasn't been fully discussed, as we're at the very infancy of that redevelopment. But I think if we were to sell that land later, that would come back to us, I believe, as CDBG program income. So we would have a timeliness test. But of course, if that closing happens, say May 15th, we would have more time to the following May 1st, if that makes sense. And I think it's to note that originally White Labs was going to close mid to late May of 2020, but due to COVID challenges and a variety of challenges there, the closing didn't happen until the end of the year. And then we had to kind of jumpstart second week in January to figure out the best way to spend the funding.
And just to provide some background on the 65 Ford Street. So when we approached council, it was actually almost a year ago this month, February, with the opportunity to put Ford Street under contract. We did talk about utilizing the affordable housing bond dollars, the land banking dollars, to complete that acquisition, and that was the initial plan. And then we began due diligence, which has taken about a year really to fulfill all the necessary due diligence to investigate the site. And so this really just came together with the opportunity to reprogram the Cdbg income dollars to have this transaction take place. I think some of what we're hoping to underscore, and I certainly hear the comment about the connections with urban renewal, but if we can take dollars that are restricted, which is our Cdbg dollars, and utilize those in an eligible activity, it does open up options with the dollars basically left on the table. So we basically don't spend, right, our affordable housing land banking dollars, and those are city dollars, so there's not as many strings attached to those dollars. And again, we also have the remainder of the purchase money that came from the sale of the property at White Labs. So there's still that. So I think as staff, we're thinking that if we can strategically and in a timely manner use these Cdbg funds on a vetted and eligible activity that we can support and we feel like we can accomplish within that time frame, then at least we can allow other financial opportunities to present themselves to, like you're saying, Vice Mayor, to connect that more strongly with the urban renewal component, given the property's history at the White Labs location.
Vice Mayor Smith, I have a thought worth sharing. I wonder, so this is a discussion today and will ultimately come to council, and because of this May deadline, will likely come to us pretty quickly. I wonder if, in thinking back about the Cedar Cliff and the land and the discussions in AHAC last year, the kind of proposal laid out, and I know none of this is in concrete and is all subject to change, but there was discussion around the goals of the redevelopment of that area and that land to include home ownership opportunities and mixed income. I wonder if there's a way for us to potentially support this with additional layered in information, like it needs to support home ownership. It needs to create home ownership. And maybe that would speak to your point about it not becoming a rental, like we're not addressing urban renewal and the loss of ownership by rental. But if we can, say that we support it if it creates home ownership, I wonder if that would help address your concern. Now, granted, it's still years out. It is not the same as giving housing authority money this year to go deploy.
Yeah, I think that is an answer, but I don't know if that is the answer. And I think some other concerns that come into play is the area. Deaver View is outside of a lot of our social centers. And what was lost during urban renewal was that sense of place, being right in the city limits, being close to folks, your social networks. So I think when we think about what was lost and how we replace that, it goes beyond just a basic trade-off with home ownership. I think it's a little more layered than that.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, I was wondering if there is a list of prospect land purchases that we can take a look at, because we're in motion right now because we have these bond funds that we have to spend around land banking. Is there a way that we can connect maybe 1.6 or maybe not, maybe the 3 million to restore what was lost during that time? Maybe some of the land that you're already looking at is within the urban renewal program area or in a red line area, and we can start making those direct connections between what was lost.
And so Paul here, I think absolutely. And I think, to just quick follow up, telling that story about, and I know it doesn't answer the question of what was lost, but the possibilities out at deed review, but then addressing what was lost with Nikki's point of freeing up funds that then could be used for other land purchases that relate to urban renewal. I don't know if we necessarily can tell that whole story in the staff report, but I can tell you that we're looking at other land purchases that I think would possibly fit into that. And so we could talk more about that perhaps, as we update next month when it comes to the 319 story. Maybe Nikki and myself can add to that story to kind of address those issues, Councilwoman Smith.
And I think that's the spirit of the movement that folks would like to see and feel. Because those two pieces of land that were exempt, they're going to continue to be conversation because the sensitivity of the matter. So I want us to be very intentional and show that we're listening and that we're making directions towards redress.
I greatly appreciate that, and thank you.
Paul, is the Talbert lot far enough along in due diligence that it could potentially close by May 1st? I mean,
we looked at that site as well as a possibility, but a couple of things there. There's, not heavy environmental issues there, but there are environmental issues that would take the HUD environmental assessment a longer period of time. Plus, also naturally due to its location in a more urban setting, there's a couple other check boxes to be thinking about what's around that parcel, as well as any historic implications and additional due diligence that time-wise would not work.
Thank you. Any other thoughts to share with staff? Staff, do you have any questions for us on how to proceed?
I appreciate the direction very much on trying to tell a more complete story in the staff report, very much. And so we will not only do that, but also, again, when we come back next month to talk about some other properties, we'll engage that communication mechanism as well to do that storytelling too.
This is Kathy, and I would also add, sorry I had to step away for a minute, but I think it's very helpful to hear the council members talk about the intent of what we're trying to do as well, because there may be other ways that we can meet that intent. So that's very helpful, and I appreciate your comments.
Okay. Great discussion, everyone. And I think that completes item number 5. Which is really our last item. So we have space for public comment. Jenna, did we have any public comment, general public comment?
There's no one in the queue.
Okay. We have no one in the speaker queue. We have no public comment, and that leaves us only one thing left to do, which is adjourn. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. Great questions, as always, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Guys, oh, I'm sorry. Wait. Oh, hold on, freeze. I forgot something very important. Sam, are you still here with us? Let me see you, Sam Powers. Sam Powers, somebody page him and get him back on here. Y'all, this is Sam's very last meeting. Oh, I'm so sorry that I let a couple people sneak away. Let's get Shanika back. Let me know when we have Sam. I hear some noise. Sam Powers, are you with us?
Hi.
Oh, hi, Shanika. Thank you. I didn't realize, and we're trying to get Sam back on because it happens to be Sam Powers' very last meeting with the city of Asheville, and we wanted to recognize him, and that is my mistake for letting some folks escape before we did so. Sam, are you on with us yet?
It doesn't look like he will be at the funding meeting, but this is his last official monthly HCD meeting.
Oh, well, it looks like Kathy's trying to get him on the phone, and Sam has been a tremendous asset to the city of Asheville over the years, a tremendous leader. I've heard only wonderful things about him. And I just wanted to at least set aside a minute. Oh, is that him? Nope. Okay. I wanted to set aside a minute to make sure that we thanked and recognized him. I didn't know if anybody else had anything they wanted to share, but I have certainly. Oh, there he is.
There
Sam.
he is.
We're in the middle of celebrating you. We're sorry we let the meeting get away without a formal congratulations and an enormous thank you to you and your time. I understand this is going to be your last virtual meeting.
Well, thank you. Now, when you adjourned, I signed off, so I'm so sorry, but thank you very much. I appreciate it, and it has been a joy to work with everyone, to work with council and this committee, and I'm grateful, and I will be around, and so however I can assist moving forward in a new role, I'm happy to do that, and would look forward to doing that.
Thank you, Sam. You've had a lasting impact on the city. And I was sharing briefly that I have heard nothing but wonderful things about you since I moved here and your leadership, and just an incredible thank you to you and your commitment to this city.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now, everyone, we can officially adjourn. Thanks for coming back on, everyone, to say thanks to Sam. And how about one last hoorah?
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days. Bye.